There are movies that tell a story, and then there are movies that confess a truth Americans were never meant to hear out loud. Goodfellas doesn't romanticize crime, it weaponizes temptation. From its first line, the film doesn't ask for your attention, it assumes it owns you. This isn't a gangster fantasy built on guns and bravado. It's a clinical dissection of how power seduces, how loyalty rots, and how violence becomes routine when consequences are postponed long enough. Director Martin Scorsese understood something most Hollywood films avoid. The mob didn't just exist alongside America, it mirrored it. Ambition without limits, success without accountability, brotherhood without mercy. Every laugh in Goodfellas hides a threat. Every favor carries a debt, and every rise is quietly setting up a fall. The terrifying part isn't how these men die, it's how good they make the life feel right up until it destroys them. And once you see how that illusion was built, you'll never watch the film the same way again. 1. The scene that exposed the rules of the world. The most unforgettable moment in Goodfellas arrives without a gunshot, only a laugh that stops too suddenly. The "funny how" scene lays bare the mob's hidden rulebook in a matter of seconds. A casual compliment turns into a threat, and humor becomes a dangerous test of rank. What unsettles the audience isn't shouting, but uncertainty. We laugh, then hesitate, then understand that even laughter can be punished. Though improvised, the scene functions like a warning label. It explains how this world operates before the story fully accelerates. Power here isn't enforced through force alone, but through emotional dominance. You remain safe only while the most volatile man feels affirmed. That fragile balance defines everything that follows, casting a shadow over every interaction and turning charm into a potential trigger for violence. 2. Tommy DeVito and the cost of unchecked power. Tommy DeVito is frightening, not because he shouts, but because nothing ever stops him. He exists in a system where fear has quietly replaced accountability. Useful to the organization and insulated by the right connections, Tommy is tolerated long after he should have been confronted. That tolerance becomes a slow-moving catastrophe. Every violent outburst that goes unanswered teaches him the same lesson. Consequences are for other people. The cause is structural, a culture that confuses loyalty with permission and treats restraint as weakness. The effect is unavoidable escalation. For older audiences who have watched institutions protect the dangerous simply because they were effective, Tommy feels uncomfortably familiar. Scorsese intentionally softened the real-life brutality behind the character, making him more plausible, not less. Tommy isn't a mythic villain. He's what happens when intimidation is rewarded and justice is postponed until it can no longer arrive. 3. Henry Hill, the everyman inside the machine. Henry Hill isn't the most violent figure in the room, nor is he the sharpest, and that is exactly what makes him dangerous. He represents the ordinary man, seduced by comfort, access, and recognition, willing to accept the rewards without fully confronting their cost. Henry doesn't design the system he lives in, he profits from it, and that quiet dependence becomes his moral failure. His easy charm lets him drift between worlds, family life, neighborhood streets, and criminal circles without ever fully belonging to any of them. His rise begins with proximity, not ambition. He stands close enough to power to feel its warmth. The damage comes slowly. Ethics erode without ceremony. By the time Henry recognizes the trap, it feels natural. For older viewers, his story resonates as a cautionary tale of success built on connections rather than conscience. 4. The Copacabana shot, power without resistance. The Copacabana tracking shot stands as one of cinema's clearest illustrations of how corruption moves quietly through society. In a single, unbroken glide, Henry bypasses lines, rules, and social boundaries not through aggression, but through recognition. Doors open because they've been conditioned to. This moment isn't romantic at its core, it's architectural. The space reorganizes itself around Henry because the system has long learned to reward men like him. The cause is corruption, disguised as generosity. The effect is privilege so seamless it feels invisible. Karen isn't seduced only by Henry, but by the promise of a life without resistance. For viewers familiar with institutional favoritism, the scene resonates deeply. Inequality here isn't loud or violent, it's smooth, efficient, and self-sustaining. 5. Real mobsters, real texture. Scorsese's decision to cast real mob associates wasn't about shock value, it was about texture. These men didn't perform menace. They carried it naturally through stillness, posture, and watchful silence. Their discomfort with paperwork speaks volumes, revealing a culture rooted in anonymity, leverage, and unspoken rules. The cause was a relentless pursuit of authenticity. The effect is a world that feels inhabited, not staged. For older viewers, especially those raised in dense urban communities, this realism is instantly recognizable. You can feel when someone truly belongs to a world versus when they're merely acting inside it. These background figures reinforce the film's central truth. The mob doesn't rely on constant spectacle. It survives through patience, observation, and presence. That quiet credibility anchors the film and makes its eventual unraveling feel inevitable. 6. Improvisation as psychological strategy. Scorsese's refusal to provide full scripts wasn't disorder, it was precision. By keeping actors uncertain, he recreated the psychological instability of the world they were portraying. The cause was a director intent on capturing tension that felt lived rather than staged. The effect is dialogue that overlaps, interrupts, and shifts without warning, mirroring real power dynamics. Conversations feel reactive, not rehearsed. For the audience, this creates a low-level unease that never fully dissipates. You're unsettled because the characters are unsettled. This method is especially potent in scenes with Tommy, where unpredictability itself becomes the threat. For viewers who have endured volatile leadership or unstable systems, the sensation feels familiar. The film doesn't merely depict anxiety, it transmits it, turning the experience into something remembered rather than watched. 7. Prison isn't punishment, it's adjustment. The prison sequences dismantle the comforting myth that incarceration automatically restores order. Inside, the mob doesn't reform, it recalibrates. Meals improve, rules soften, and comfort quietly returns. The razor-thin garlic isn't a colorful detail, it's a symbol of influence seeping through concrete walls. The cause is money and connection, extending where authority is supposed to end. The effect is a justice system that punishes selectively and deters no one with leverage. For older Americans who've watched institutions promise reform, yet deliver exemptions, this rings true. Prison becomes another system to master, proving the mob's real strength isn't violence, but adaptability. 8. Drugs, paranoia, and the body telling the truth. As the story races toward collapse, Henry's body begins to tell the truth. His world refuses to acknowledge. His unblinking eyes, frantic movements, and sleepless paranoia aren't stylized choices. They're consequences. The cause is sustained excess, drugs, pressure, and fear piling up day after day. The effect is visible psychological breakdown. Glamour evaporates, replaced by exhaustion. Rapid edits and overlapping sound force the audience to feel his unraveling rather than observe it. For older viewers, the sequence is deliberately draining, a reminder that no system outruns the body forever. Eventually, the cost is collected. 9. Music as moral timeline. Scorsese's soundtrack isn't nostalgic decoration, it's narrative architecture. Each song is period accurate, anchoring scenes in emotional reality. Early music feels buoyant and confident. Later tracks grow darker, fragmented, and mournful. The cause is deliberate musical curation. The effect is a subconscious moral timeline. As Henry's world decays, so does the emotional resonance of the music. For viewers who lived through these eras, the songs carry personal memory. That familiarity deepens the tragedy. You're not just watching a life fall apart, you're hearing the echoes of a time when everything seemed possible. 10. The final shot and the lesson that lingers. The final gunshot aimed at the audience isn't shock, it's accusation. Borrowed from early cinema, it reminds us that stories like this don't end cleanly. The cause is a life built on intimidation and shortcuts. The effect is a legacy that refuses closure. Goodfellas ends not with redemption, but with emptiness. Henry survives, but as a schnook, stripped of identity and illusion. The lesson is brutal and clear. Systems built on exploitation eventually consume everyone inside them. The tragedy isn't the fall, it's how long the rise felt justified. And that lesson, once seen clearly, is impossible to forget. In the end, Goodfellas endures because it refuses to lie about where temptation leads. It shows that systems don't collapse from the outside, they rot from within, protected by convenience, loyalty, and silence. The film's lasting lesson is not that crime fails, but that unchecked success always carries a hidden debt. Power without limits creates monsters. Comfort without conscience creates accomplices. And adaptability without accountability only delays the reckoning. For viewers who have watched institutions rise, decay, and repeat the cycle, this story feels less like fiction and more like recognition. That is Goodfellas' true legacy. It exposes how easily society confuses access with achievement and survival with victory. If this breakdown changed how you see the film, or made you reflect on the systems around you, support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who still thinks this movie is just about gangsters. The real story is far closer to home.